Meow. I'm Andy Jones, your host for Art Talk, and I have taught literally thousands of people to paint. And if you have any desire to paint, I can teach you how to do it. Today we're going to be painting this little black and white kitty cat, and I want to let you know a couple of things that we're going to be emphasizing today. We're going to paint the eye early on in the lesson, so we have a friend with us. And if you notice the outside edges of the cat, that indicates how long or how short the hair on or fur on your animal is going to be. So we've got kind of a soft diffused edge here, which lets us know that our cat is probably a short hair and not a really long-haired cat. And he's got a very kind of fleshy pink triangular nose, so we'll be spending some time creating that, and the eye are the most important features of our cat. So now I'm going to set this painting out of the way and show you the canvas that I'm going to be working on today. It's an 8x8 canvas, and you can see that the design is sketched onto my canvas. The link for the downloadable pattern is in the description box below, along with a link for our 17-piece curated set of acrylic paints that you will enjoy using for all the lessons in Art Talk. All right, so let's get some paint out on our palette, and we'll actually start painting our kitty cat right away. So I'm going to put some asphaltum out on the palette, and this is a nice transparent golden brown color. And I'm going to pick up some of the asphaltum on a number 8 flat brush, and we're going to just paint in the eyeball. And I like to start with the eye of an animal that I'm painting so that I have a friend with me throughout the entire painting process.
Andy, what's that thing that you always say when we paint eyes, that it can't just be a human eye, right?
No, you have to paint the eye that matches the animal. So if you were to paint this cat with a human-shaped almond eye, it would be really creepy and not something you would want to be near.
Definitely not.
All right, so the voice you're hearing is my good buddy Stephen White, who is a friend of our series here. So Stephen is with me often filming and adding his commentary. So I want to know, do you have a cat, Stephen?
I don't have a cat. I am going back and forth on getting one pretty soon. I've got a list of names that maybe I'll run by you later.
Okay.
So that we can hopefully get to a more conclusive decision on whether I should get this cat or not.
Well, I am firmly in Camp Dog, and that's, everybody's got their thing. So if you decide to get a cat, I hope you get one that is really affectionate and not just knocking things off of tables all the time.
With cats, you kind of you get what you get and you don't pitch a fit, right?
There you go. All right, so we have our eye undercoated in this kind of golden brown, which is asphaltum. And let's go ahead and put some more colors out on our palette, and we're going to start painting in the background. So I'm going to put out some titanium white, and I'm going to put out a little bit of pure black, and I'm also going to put out a little bit of aqua, because what good cat painting doesn't have some aqua in it. And I'm going to put out a little bit of burnt umber as well. All right, one thing that I don't really have sketched out on here is we need a little change of background here. So I'm going to just sketch a little bit of a line on here, because we've got the white of the bridge of the nose, which is going to be very light, and we want to put some dark. Let's move this up a little bit. Let's move this up here more in this kind of area, because I want the light of the cat's nose to contrast with the dark of the background that we're going to paint on there. So that gives us a little bit more of a contrast and makes our painting a little bit more interesting. So let's we've made a mess here, so let's clean that up. Looks like a cat would make a mess. So let's take some titanium white, and we're going to add a little bit of black, brown, and aqua to this to make a really interesting gray color. But I did wipe my palette knife off Best practice is to keep your palette knife clean so that you don't contaminate your paint colors as you're using them. So we're going to add a little bit of burnt umber to the white, and it's giving us a light brown color, but I want to make it gray, so I'm going to add a little bit of black to that. Add your black very sparingly because it's a pretty strong color. And you see that little bit of black instantly starts to change the brown color toward a gray. Going to add a little bit more. Now, Stephen, you said you don't have a cat now, but did you ever have a cat growing up?
No, my dad was allergic to them, so we weren't really able to have them in my house growing up. So it would be my first sort of step into getting a cat ever, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm adding some turquoise to this just to make it a more interesting color and shift it a little bit into kind of a little blue-gray tone.
Yeah, it's like we said, with cats, you kind of just get the personality they come with. You can't really train a cat. But I think I want one that is affectionate, that is, good around people and friendly. I wouldn't mind having a crazy little guy running around either. If he's the kind of cat that runs into walls and is always slipping and sliding on the floor, I'd be cool with that too.
Yeah, you just don't want the cat that's going to eat you.
Yeah, no, I don't want that. That wouldn't really be beneficial to, my existence.
No. I had friends who had a cat, and it was like, if the cat got in your lap, you left the cat alone, because if you started to pet the cat, it would like claw you to death. And it only took one time for somebody not to listen to you when you're like, don't pet the cat, he doesn't like that. Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm putting out some burnt sienna here on the palette, because we're going to try to make a nice transition here between my blue-gray color and my really dark background color. So I'm going to start by just putting the corner of my brush into my kind of blue-gray color, and then the other half of the brush into my burnt sienna, and I'm patting this on the palette to create kind of a nice transition between the rust color and the blue-gray color. Now don't worry too much about this right now, because we're going to mess with this some more later on, but it's going to give us a start. So kind of straddling that little line that we sketched on is where I'm putting the rust color. So we're tapping and patting that on, and we're just creating a nice soft transition from rust into the blue-gray color. I'm going to wipe my brush off and pick up some more of the blue-gray color, and we're going to pat that on and ease into the outline of the cat just a little bit, so you have a nice edge to work into when we start painting the cat, and we don't have a gap between the cat and the background. So I'm going to just come back down here and soften this transition a little bit more, and that's pretty good, so we'll leave that alone. Pick up more of our blue-gray color, and I'll add a little titanium white to this, and we're creating some value changes in our background, because you want your background to be kind of soft and muted tones. And once again, I'm going back into that little area there and just patting a little bit more of that on. Now we've got a good transition there, and I'm going to continue up above the cat's ear, taking some of this blue-gray color, tapping that on, pick up some white, and we'll just dirty brush this together. Let me give you a little piece of advice here. Invest in a fairly good quality canvas. Now, I'm not saying you need to buy the most expensive canvases out there, but also don't buy the cheapest ones. Super cheap canvases are about as rough as a corn cob, and it's more difficult to paint on that. So invest in a decent quality canvas, and it's easier for you to learn to paint. And you'll have a much nicer painting when you're done. So picking up a little bit of white on the brush, changing the values a little bit, and right down here I'm going to add just a little tiny bit of burnt umber. Pick that up on the corner of the brush, and we'll add a little bit of that brown back here, making that just a little bit different color. All right, so now we're going to turn our attention to this dark color here in the foreground, and I'm going to start with some burnt umber and a little bit of black, and I'm just brush mixing this together. Don't want it solid black, but I want it pretty dark. And we're going to paint right next to that little nose, trying to keep this dark color out of there. And then I'm just going to pat this dark color on. All right, now I've picked up burnt sienna on one corner of that brush, and I'm going to put it right next to the burnt sienna that was on there before. And then we're going to pat this down into the darker area. Still not loving how that looks there, that little transition. So I'm going to now come back and really load my brush with stronger burnt sienna and a little bit more burnt umber. And we're just going to tap and pat that on here. Bring that rusty color on down. And then we'll go back to what we started with, which is our blue-gray color and our sienna. And we're going to tap that on here. And just kind of move that down, creating a nice little transition. And now I'm just playing in the background too much, but that's okay. We're going to leave this alone in just a second, and then we're going to move on to our cat's eye.
Andy, when was the last time you saw Cats the musical?
When it was originally touring and I was living in Florida, I took my mom and we went with a friend of ours to see the touring company of it. And unfortunately, the whole sound system at the Civic Center was messed up. So we experienced Cats with a garbled background.
Ew.
But that was the last time that I saw Andrew Lloyd Webber's smash hit, the Old Possum's Practical Book of Cats, or the Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats.
Is that the full name of it? Or is that just what you're calling it?
The show is just called Cats, and it's based on T.S. Eliot's novel, The Old Possum's Book of Practical Cats.
Gotcha. Okay.
So there's always more to everything.
Uh-huh.
All right, so while Stephen is digesting all of that information, we're going to take a quick break and we're going to dry the background of our painting. I'd like to take a minute to thank Plaid Enterprises for sponsoring Art Talk. They are the makers of folk art acrylics, which I absolutely love using. I've used this paint since I was a young tot, and now that I'm an old fart, I still use this paint. We have a 17-piece set that we've curated just for you. Ordering information is in the description below, and we also have great brushes for you. We have a 7-piece set of Folk Art Select Firm Bristle brushes. These are absolutely incredible. I use them every time I paint. And I've never done that in my entire life. Now, let's get back to our video. Okay, we are back and our background is dry and we are ready to pay some more attention to our cat's eye. So what I'm going to do is pick up a little burnt umber just on the corner of my number 8 flat brush, and I don't really have any paint on the other half of the brush, and I'm going to shade at the top of this cat's eye. Now, Stephen, you mentioned me seeing the Broadway musical Cats, and have you seen the Broadway musical Cats?
I have not seen the musical, but I have seen the absolutely abhorrent motion picture Cats.
We're not even going to pretend that that exists, because that is the saddest thing ever and something that no one should see.
I mean, it was my first exposure to Cats. Like I said, I've never seen the musical. I think it's worth mentioning that these cats, the characters in Cats, have some of the best names for any character in any piece of media ever. Like whoever was in charge of just naming the characters.
That would be T.S. Eliot.
Rum Tum Tugger, Mr. Mistopheles,
Yes.
Old Deuteronomy,
Uh-huh.
Grisabella,
Of course, we have to stop here with the mention of Grisabella. I don't know who played Grisabella in the movie, because I've not seen.
I believe it was Jennifer Hudson.
Okay, well, she could carry that off. All right, so I've picked up some yellow ochre on the corner of my brush, and we're going to start to develop a light area in the lower left quadrant of the eye. So I'm just brushing on a little bit of that, and can we get a good close-up of that? Just want to make sure people see that it's nothing fancy. We've just developed a little light area there. And we're not quite done with that light area, because I'm going to put out a little bit of sunny yellow on my palette. You're not going to need much of that at all. And on the corner of the brush that I picked up the yellow ochre, I'm picking up the sunny yellow. And we may do this more than once, because I want to get this kind of highlight really bright. But I'm going to start at the bottom of the highlight, and I'm just tapping that kind of highlight on there. So you see you get that nice bright highlight down there in the bottom of the cat's eye. And I'm going to just pick up a small amount of this color, and I'm going to tap some little light areas on the eye. And you don't need much paint, but you just have to have enough for it to come off the brush. So I'm tapping here. You're getting this kind of little glints of light. But we know that a cat's eye can't be left like this. We have to put a pupil in. And the pupil in a cat's eye is, it's not a diamond, it's not like a marquee diamond that's got a point at the top and a point at the bottom. It's more of an oval shape. And so we're going to start at the very top of the eyeball, and we're going to tap this oval shape on. And we want to make sure that it is longer and it's not quite pointed at the bottom, but that it has a little bit of a rounded end to the pupil. And it's a little bit of an oval shape. And that's going to be enough of a pupil there in the eye. So I'm going to wipe my number 8 flat brush pretty thoroughly. I'm going to pick up some titanium white, and we are making a soft, kind of medium value gray here.
Do you think that's the same kind of eye that the Cat in the Hat has?
I don't know.
What about the version of Cat in the Hat with Mike Myers?
No.
What is it with cats and having like abhorrent movies made about them?
I don't know, but I am old enough to remember the old animated Cat in the Hat. And that little animation, you got to learn foreign languages in it. So it was cat, hat, French, chat chapeau, Mexico, gato, and a sombrero. So Dr. Seuss was all about teaching you foreign language. All right, so I'm going to take my medium value gray, and I'm going to just apply a little area of gray to the cat's eye. So you can see that. Steven's going to get a nice close-up of that, so there's no question about what's going on there. Of course, there's always questions about what's happening with live-action movies. All right, and why do they have to do them to like Dr. Seuss things? Because How the Grinch Stole Christmas was a disaster, and the animated one
We
was
need to
so much
stop
better.
bringing Dr. Seuss into the real world. It just
Yeah,
doesn't work.
it
We've
doesn't.
proven that to ourselves time and time again.
Yes. All right, so, and we'll just mention the Lorax as another example of let's not mess with things. All right, so now we're going to put a highlight of titanium white, and I've got white on the corner of my brush, and we're going to put that white highlight on there. And it's not just a pin dot, because if you put a really tiny white highlight in an animal's eye, that's going to look like the meanest cat ever, or whatever animal you're painting. The highlight probably needs to be just a little bit larger than you would think. Now, one last thing for our kitty cat's eye. I'm going to take some more of that sunny yellow, and I'm just going to tap a little bit more of a brighter highlight on there at the bottom. So there we go. So now we've got our friend to watch us while we paint the rest of this. And let's turn our attention to the kitty's nose. So we're going to, again, keep using our number 8 flat, and I'm going to pick up some titanium white and a little burnt sienna. And that's going to give me a nice light color, but we need to make our cat cuter. So we're going to give the cat a little bit more of a pinky nose. So I'm putting out a little tiny dab of apple red. And we're going to mix a little apple red into this, which is going to make the cat's nose a little bit pinker.
I can't believe we brought up cats and didn't talk about Buster Jones.
I knew you were
Because
going
you know what's about to happen, right?
I know exactly what's about to happen. And I am
And we'll let the edit speak for itself.
Yes, of course. Stephen does love his edits and animations, and I do too. So, Buster Jones is coming at you. All right, so now that I've got this nice kind of pinky flesh tone, I'm going to paint in the nose of this cat and try to stay close to the shape that you have transferred onto your canvas, because eyes and noses and really kind of distinctive physical things you want to make sure, or characteristics you want to make sure that you keep in the right perspective and the right shape. So don't be afraid to click on the link that's in the description box and download the line drawing of the cat so that you can paint a well-proportioned cat. All right, so we're getting this little fleshy nose on there, and then we need to pick up a little more apple red and burnt sienna on one corner of our brush. And we're going to paint in the nostril of the cat. And we want this to be darker, but we also don't want it to look like it is a separate feature of the cat. It needs to look like it belongs on the nose. So not too jarring of a color shift there. I'm going to put a little bit of dark right at the top of the nose. And we're going to pat that color in so that it's nice and soft. Now, Stephen, do you want a long hair cat or a short hair cat?
I don't think that I'm picky. I think it really comes down to the personality and I guess what name it has, honestly. But you know, the personality has to come first.
Oh, absolutely. You just can't assign any random name to an animal.
Yeah, naming animals has always been very important to me.
Oh, absolutely.
So it's the longest part of the thought process.
I've always given my dogs what people would consider human names.
Yep.
So I had a St. Bernard named Dolores, and she certainly fit that name. She was a Dolores. All right, so we're going to let this dry, and we are going to begin to paint some of our cat, starting with some of this lighter area. But I also want to put out a little cinnamon on our palette, which is just a nice kind of light, warm brown color. And I'm going to shift to a number 12 flat brush for this. And we are not going to paint this cat's fur by trying to paint individual hairs. We're going to paint kind of wispy brush strokes on there to give us the illusion of a fluffy cat. We're going to begin to paint kind of the white areas of the cat. And if you paint white areas of fur white, then it will look flat and not have any kind of interest or kind of dimension to it. So I'm going to take a little bit of the cinnamon and a little bit of burnt umber, and we're going to do a lot of brush mixing here. So you'll see me just kind of moving around on the palette, and I'll let you know every time I'm picking up a different color or changing color. So I'm going to start kind of right here below the nose, and along this line I'm scrubbing on some of this cinnamon and burnt umber mixture. And of course, this doesn't begin to look like fur. It will. So I'm going to wipe my brush off. I'm going to pick up some titanium white, and I'm going to start brushing that on. But you see it's not quite white. But as I stroke into this brownish color that we put on there, we're creating a different kind of tone here. And I'm applying this color kind of in the way that the fur grows, because it would all grow from the front of the cat's face back. All right, you were talking about live action cats, and I think one of the most famous live action cats, as it were, was Catwoman from
Oh
the
yeah,
Batman TV series. So, do you know who Catwoman was?
I know it was Holly Berry. Are you asking like?
The TV series from the
Oh,
1960s.
Andy, no. You know
Okay.
that I don't know that. Why did you ask that?
Well, I didn't know if maybe you had seen it on Nickelodeon or
I know
something.
the early 2000s Halle Berry movie that almost tanked her career.
Okay.
She's since made a comeback of, to varying degrees. But
Yes. Well, there were a number of different cat women on the TV series, and one of them was Lee Merriweather, who was Buddy Ebsen's daughter, and she was a marginally okay Catwoman. And then Julie Newmar, very tall, statuesque actress, was also a Catwoman. But arguably the most famous Catwoman was Eartha Kitt. And she had this kind of purr and growl that was her kind of trademark. And she was a singer and actress and entertainer back in the day, and she sang in like 7 languages. She was quite the character, and Orson Welles, who was the guy behind Citizen Kane, which you might have heard of.
I've seen Citizen Kane.
Okay, so Orson Welles was the director of Citizen Kane, and he was really kind of a style maker and, kingmaker, as it were. And he dubbed her the most exciting woman in the world. And so, she was a controversial political figure, but great actress and most known as Catwoman. All right, so we're going to continue. We're not done with this. We're going to come back and revisit this, but that gives you a little indication of how we're going to create this kind of fluffy fur texture. So once again, into our cinnamon and burnt umber. And we're going to bring a little bit of this up here, and then where we're going to have our transition to our black. I don't want it to be super sharp contrast, so we're going to darken this area a little bit and wipe the brush, pick up titanium white, and this time I'm going to add a little bit of our blue-gray color to that. Added more than I wanted, but that's okay. We can fix just about anything with our paint. And so we're starting, and you see I'm doing this in kind of a sweeping manner, just kind of chopping this in, leaving some of my dark. And this is where if you've got a super rough canvas, this is going to be a little harder to do. All right, so I'm going to wipe my brush off again, pick up more titanium white, and we're going to come back and we're going to apply some more of that on top. And here's the important thing I want you to see. Where this is starting to set up and get a little sticky over here, I can take some more white and I can add some more areas of white on top, and it shows up more than if I'm over here where it's softening into the wet paint underneath. All right, so let's move on up to the face of the cat, and this time I'm going to use cinnamon, burnt umber, and some of this mixture that we were just highlighting with over here, and we're going to put a little lighter dark color on there. That sounds crazy, but I don't want my dark color to be this dark, so it's going to be a little bit lighter. And we're going to put some kind of between the nose and where the light fur stops and the dark fur starts. And then we're going to bring some of this around, because what we're going to do is we're going to make this little part of the cat's face a little bit fatter. So again, picking up some of that background blue-gray color, a little bit of white. So we're making just a different color here, and we're going to just kind of tap some of that on this way, coming down to the nose. And I'm going to turn this around so it's a little easier for me to get this right next to the nose without really covering the nose up.
Do you think the cat that you're painting has the ability to drive a car like Toonces?
No, I mean, I think Toons is the only cat that drove a car, unless I'm maybe thinking Sylvester in the Looney Tunes cartoons might have driven a car.
Yeah, he probably did. And I think the Cat in the Hat he may have been known to drive a car or a motor vehicle of sorts.
He drove a moss-covered, three-handled family credenza.
I don't know that he even had his license, if I'm being honest.
Oh, the Cat in the Hat?
He was mischievous.
Oh, of course. He was there with Thing 1 and Thing 2. All right, Stephen, I am continuing to put this kind of putty color on, which was cinnamon, burnt umber, and titanium white. And we're just brushing some of that on, setting the tone for our cat. And I would like to know, as I'm sure everybody else would like to know, what is your favorite cat character?
Well, we've talked about Cat in the Hat.
Yes.
We've talked about Bustopher Jones. I would say, other than that, I'm a big fan of Cat Dog.
Okay, don't know Cat Dog.
Cat Dog was a cartoon in the 90s on Nickelodeon that was about a cat and a dog that were conjoined. So
Okay.
one end was a cat and one end was a dog.
All right, sounds like somebody got the short end of that stick.
Yeah.
All right, any other?
What about you?
I am thinking one of my favorite cats is probably one of the lesser known Looney Tune cats. It was Claude. And do you know Claude the cat?
It sounds vaguely familiar.
Okay, Claude was a very big, fat cat. And Claude would spend quite a bit of time, getting all situated to lay down. And Claude would get all comfortable. And then this little bulldog puppy would race into the room, start barking at the top of its lungs, and Claude would spring out of his bed and catch onto the ceiling with his claws. And then as he calmed down, he would let loose and then fall down on his back. And then just before he reached the ground, he would flip over and land.
Sounds pretty true to life.
Yes. So Claude was I always felt bad for Claude, because I know once I get settled down for a nap, the last thing I want is for some barking dog to wake me up. All right, so we're just starting to highlight a little bit more on the bridge of the nose, and then we will highlight up the kind of blaze on the kitty cat's face. And all of this is going to change once we really start getting our black on there. We'll come back and make this much whiter. But I'm going to continue just to kind of fluff some of this color on.
I think I'm also a big fan of Tom from Tom and Jerry.
Okay.
Just because when you get older, you start to feel bad for Tom, right? Like when you're a kid, you're like, Jerry's the best. He's that crazy guy, always getting away with it. And then when you look at it as an older person, it's like, whoa.
He was just mean.
Yeah, he was just mean. He was cruel.
I also think that some of that has to do with the time frame that we're in, because years ago, no one really felt too bad for, like, Wile E. Coyote never getting the Roadrunner, because he was keeping the Acme Company in business. All right, so I've wiped my brush off. I just smeared some of that color around here, and I'm going to pick up a little bit more white, and we are going to start to dabble that on here on the muzzle of the kitty. And I want to put a little bit of the cinnamon and burnt umber on closer to the nose, just to give it a little bit of color there, so we don't have a pink nose and then just white next to that. All right, so I'm just brush mixing this color, and I'm going to add a little bit of this kind of background color in there as well, just to relate the background to the kitty cat a little bit more. Now, are there any cats that you don't like?
Well, I have sort of a love-hate relationship with all of the cats from Cats.
How many times have you watched that live action movie?
Once was enough, man. It sticks with you. It's nightmarish. I mean, you remember the roaches in
Listen,
the movie?
Everything about that movie should just not have ever happened.
The roaches were little people too. They were tiny little roach people. I can't really say that I'm a big fan of Puss in Boots either. I think he's just annoying. I don't know what it is. He's always rubbed me the wrong way.
It's not the best kind of nursery rhyme to have turned into a movie, but they gotta sell tickets to movies. All right, so here you could see I'm beginning to lighten this little area on the muzzle a little bit, and so I think it would be a good time just to give this a quick dry. Okay, and there was not much paint on there, so that did dry really, really quickly. What about Josie and the Pussycats?
I don't know a thing about them.
You don't know anything about Josie and the Pussycats?
I'm sure you'll tell me.
Well, they were a band,
Okay.
and Josie was the lead singer, and the other gals, it was an all-girl group, so.
Are they one of those bands that says the name of their band in songs?
Only in the title sequence of their animated series did they sing about being Josie and the Pussycats. But they also, now I can't think of the name. They had a cat who was kind of a nefarious character in the cartoon series, but can't hold that against Josie. They were doing the best they could. And then they later came back in outer space, so we went off the rails with the kind of the Josie reboot.
Did you ever get exposed to the Thundercats?
To me, Thundercats were Transformers with whiskers.
Pretty much,
Okay,
yeah.
so that's my extent of the Thundercats. All right, so we're going to start lightening the bridge of the kitty's nose, and we want to work in the direction that the fur grows. So basically on a cat, everything on the face is going to grow from the nose back. So nose going up the face of the cat. And again, we are not trying to paint individual hairs on this cat. All right, so I think we're pretty good right now for this much of the cat. So let's start in with our black fur. So I am going to start with the pure black, but pure black is going to be so harsh by itself. So I'm going to add a nice big chunk of burnt umber to that, just to soften that black color a little bit. All right, so we're going to start kind of here on the cat's head. And I'm going to carry that right to the edge of the canvas back here. And as I'm applying more paint to the brush, I can check here on the palette to make, not on the palette, on the painting. I can check right here on the painting to see how the paint is coming off of the brush. And there's a little bit of a fuzzy haze there, which is good, because I'm going to turn my attention up here to the back of the cat's head, and I want to begin to kind of flick some of this black hair on and let it soften directly into the background. And I'll begin to apply more paint to fill in solid as we move down into the cat. So you can see how we've got a little bit of a soft edge there, which is exactly what we want. And again, the amount of hair that you pull out away from the body of the cat is going to indicate if it's a long-haired cat or a short-haired cat. All right, I think that's plenty back there to give us a nice soft edge. And we're going to do the same sort of thing as the black fur meets the white fur. So we're swooping and sweeping that on. And we just want to merge these colors together. And by not having too much paint on the brush, that's how we get this really kind of soft transition. Because we don't want a harsh line defined or between the dark and the light colors.
But Andy, wouldn't you say that cats are both soft and harsh?
Yeah, probably best to keep some of my opinions to myself. But they can be. I mean, they can be really, really big, fluffy animals. I have friends who have big Maine Coon cats, and those are, well, they're just huge cats and long hair and really very, very pretty animals. All right, so I'm going to continue to kind of brush little bits of this dark fur down over the light. And so kind of right here in this little area here, I'm going to do a little change of direction. And I'm going to sweep some of this down into the blaze a little bit further. But we are working kind of right with our design. And we're going to come back and we're going to sweep some of the light color back into the dark. So we're doing a little bit of back and forth here. And when you get your cat, Stephen, are you prepared for the cat to give you presents? Because who doesn't want a frog or a lizard or a bird or something delivered to them?
I mean, I would try my best to see it as what the cat sees it, which is, a gift. Thank you for being my friend, for bringing me food, for scooping my litter box. It would be hard to clean up dead birds, I gotta say.
And so you said that you were throwing around some cat names. So
yeah,
let's hear this list of cat names.
So I'm cooking some up. I've got
You're cooking up some cat or some cat names?
I'm cooking up some cat names.
Okay.
I've got Philip. If it's a boy cat. And I'm seeing no reaction from your face.
I'm just brushing.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, Philip is not ringing a bell.
Okay. Dennis.
Okay, I'm liking Dennis.
Cheese wheel.
No.
No?
No cheese wheel.
Hash browns. Or hash brown.
Well, the cat would have to be any color but brown.
You're right.
I mean,
you get it.
A white cat, a black cat, an orange tabby, anything but brown.
No, because if it's a white cat, like everyone's going, Snowball, There's nothing wrong with naming your cat Snowball if that's what it feels like, but...
And Stephen backpedals to make sure that everyone who has a white cat named Snowball...
Shout out to all the Snowball cats out there. But, a white cat...
Good recovery, Stephen.
A white cat named Hash Brown, that just hits, that's funny.
Well, I have a friend who has a black cat who's named Murphy Brown Cat.
Yeah.
And that is after the Candace Bergen character, Murphy Brown. But I think it's funny that the brown cat the black cat is named Brown Cat.
My friend had a cat named Secret Agent Jack Bauer. Was its full name.
Full name kitty there. Uh-huh. Well, speaking of strange kitty names, in college, I had a friend, and some people will get this and think it's hysterical like I did. Her cat's name was Chairman Meow.
That's pretty good.
Yes. I thought Chairman Meow was just like the best cat name. All right, so I want Stephen to come in here and get a real good close-up of this so that you can see how we have that little wisp of hair. And we've got a little bit more going on down here. But that's what gives us the illusion that this is all fluffy hair. And I'm not painting all of that hair. It's just kind of a wisp on. So that's what we're really searching for, to get that kind of look with our brown and black mixture that we are just making right on our brush.
Do you remember Peter Pan?
I remember Peter Pan for probably different reasons.
Okay, do you remember Captain Hook?
Yes.
Do you remember Captain Hook's first mate?
No.
Mr. Smee?
Was Mr. Smee a cat?
Well, no, but I'm just thinking Smee would be a good name for my cat.
Oh, okay. Because The the two animals I remember from Peter Pan, of course, are the crocodile and then Nana.
Who's Nana?
Nana was the dog that kind of took care of the kids.
Oh, you're right.
And Nana, of course, was a St. Bernard. So to me, Peter Pan was a St. Bernard movie.
Right. If there's a movie and it's got a St. Bernard in it, it's a St. Bernard movie.
Exactly. Like the Dustin Hoffman movie Outbreak.
Yeah.
There are St. Bernards in the beginning of that movie.
So Outbreak is a movie about St. Bernard.
It is a St. Bernard movie, yes. Now you understand how this works. So I was trying to think of some other cats. The Aristocats.
Yeah.
With Thomas O'Malley.
Uh-huh. That's a good name for a cat.
Well, I had a dog named Thomas, not Thomas O'Malley, but
You
just
do like people
Thomas.
names for your animals.
I do. Dolores, of course, great dog name there.
I just feel like if I start telling people like if I start talking about my cat and I say Thomas did this, people are going to think it's my roommate.
Well, I still kind of like the name Dennis for your cat.
Okay. Maybe we'll roll with Dennis.
Dennis has got my cat vote. All right, so I'm fluffing in with this black-brown mixture, and I'm going to come right across the top of the eye, and that's really going to set that eye into the kitty's head. All right, so I'm loving how that looks, and I'm going to just brush a little bit more of this color on back here because I want that to be a little bit wet, and up here a little bit wet too, because I can't just leave a kitty looking like that. This kitty's been to the stylist and paid a lot of money for some extra hair color.
Do you have an opinion on hairless cats?
I do.
Do I want to know what that opinion is?
I think you probably don't even need to ask.
Gotcha. Say no more.
All right, so I'm going to take some aqua on my brush, and I'm just going to give a little flick of the brush here. I can't really see what I'm doing, so let me move my head. All right, so we're just stroking on some aqua up here because a black cat needs some aqua. Yep. And do you remember the Archies?
No.
Okay, well, the Archies was a cartoon band, and Veronica, who played the keyboards, had black hair, and they always had like purple and aqua highlights in her hair. All right, so we're going to stroke on a little bit of aqua down here. Oh, and I'm going to promise to leave that alone. That looks really nice to me. It looks fluffy and soft and just what that cat needed.
You promise you'll leave it alone?
I promise I'll leave it alone.
Okay.
If I don't leave it alone, I'll have to adopt a hairless cat.
Oh my gosh. The stakes are high.
So you know I'm not touching that. Just like I wouldn't really want to touch a hairless cat. There's just something about them that I think is just not for me. Was that a diplomatic way of getting out of that?
I think so.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to add a little bit of burnt sienna back here. And we can come back and make that a little bit brighter. But I wanted to start introducing some other colors into this cat so it's not just what's going to look like solid black from a distance. All right, so once again, I'm going to take burnt umber and pure black. And this really is a soft black color. It's not dead because we have added a little bit of the burnt umber to it. All right, so I'm going to move away from domestic house cats into big cat territory.
Okay.
And I'm going to ask you if you know Elsa.
Not from Frozen?
Elsa, not from Frozen. Because if we were doing Elsa from Frozen, I would have to ask if you wanted to build a snowman.
Oh, please don't. I'm assuming she's a lion?
Elsa
That sounds like a lion name.
Elsa is a lion, and she was part of a series called Born Free. And there was a hit song and this TV show and everything about Elsa. And then they came back after Elsa had cubs, and they showed her basically raising her lion cubs. So Elsa was a very famous lion in the show Born Free.
That's cool. This is a real lion?
Yes, she was a real, they filmed it in Africa, real lion. And another show that they filmed about lions was, well, it sort of was about lions, but the show was called Doctari, and he was like a explorer, kind of vet for big game animals in Africa. And there was a cross-eyed lion named Clarence, and Clarence, honest to God, was cross-eyed, and they gave him vision correcting goggles so Clarence could see straight. And this is what we used to watch on TV when we weren't watching Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. But you probably don't even remember that, do
I don't
you?
even know what words you just said.
Mutual of Omaha is an insurance company, and they produced a TV show called Wild Kingdom. And it was on, I think it was on Sunday nights, because you watched Wild Kingdom with his name, the host was Marlon Perkins, and he had a sidekick named Jim. Jim did all the dangerous stuff with
Why
the
did they
animals.
do that? This is an insurance company?
Well, it's just, it was an advertisement thing for them,
Oh,
you know.
okay.
And so you watched Marlon Perkins and his sidekick Jim, and they would, always talk about the animals and stuff. So you watch that, and then you watch The Wonderful World of Disney. So that was, as a kid growing up. Your weekend ended with Disney and Marlon Perkins.
Well, speaking of lions and speaking of Disney, how have we not talked about Simba
And Mustafa,
and Scar and Nala? Well, they also made a live action movie out of that too. Well, pseudo live action. It was like CGI, but it looked pretty real.
again, I'm much more all about the Broadway version. That was quite something with all of the kind of puppets and things. All right, so I'm adding some burnt sienna up there on the front of the ear, and back here at the back of his ear. I'm not sure what this kitty cat should be named. Maybe if people want to give this cat a name, they can send an email to me at art_talk@plaidonline.com and let me know what this cat's name should be. I've mixed a gray color, fairly dark gray, because I don't want this to be too bright. And I'm going to just sweep a little bit of this color up just to kind of set that part of his ear off a little bit. And let's see, I probably need to come back up here because I can't mess with that. Andy does not want to take on the responsibility of a hairless cat. And we're gonna, ooh, that's good. All right, I'm gonna leave that.
Don't mess with
I'm
it.
gonna leave that alone. Leaving it alone.
So
If I like-
serious. I will find a hairless cat available for adoption and sign you up.
I can see you just like bringing me in this hairless cat. Oh, and you know the most famous hairless cat, of course, don't you?
No.
Mr. Bigglesworth?
Oh, you're right. I do know Mr.
$1
Bigglesworth.
billion. So that's another cat. Lots of James Bond villains petted cats.
It's sort of like a part of the look. To be a villain, you have to have a hairless cat.
All right, so I've picked up white on my brush, and it's got a lot of gray and turquoise in it, so I'm going to break with tradition here. I'm going to wipe my brush off, and I'm going to give it a quick rinse.
Whoa.
I know. But I'm back to my white part of the cat now, so I need to get rid of some of that color. I didn't clean it out really well, just enough. All right, loading my brush up with a little bit more white, and we are going to come back here on the muzzle and add some brighter white. And we're going to put some more white on our brush and give some more white above the nose of our kitty, making that much brighter. And then I'm going to sweep, you remember I swept the black down in, now we're going to sweep some white back out onto the black areas of the cat's face.
If you saw this cat that you're painting approach you on the street, would you, and you were gonna greet it, would you say Hello Kitty?
I absolutely would say Hello Kitty, because Hello Kitty, as everyone is now picking up on it, is probably the most famous kitty in the world.
Probably, honestly.
Yes, Hello Kitty is quite the thing. I was in Japan, and I got to go to two different Hello Kitty stores. One was everything was Hello Kitty with a pink bow, and the other was Hello Kitty with a red bow, which we don't see that much here.
Two separate stores.
Two separate gigantic stores the size of like a super Walmart. They were enormous. And if you can think of any product, I don't care what it is, any product, they have it with a Hello Kitty emblem on it, or molded into it, or it's in the shape of a Hello Kitty.
Does Hello Kitty have a phone like Garfield does?
I'm sure that Hello Kitty does. I know that they have Hello Kitty phone cases, but the Garfield phone was quite something else.
I bet those sell for a lot of money nowadays.
I don't know if they would or not, because I don't know how many people still have landlines, because the Garfield phone required a landline. All right, so I'm putting a little bit more pink on the kitty's nose, and we're just giving it a little bit of texture. Then I wanted to make sure that the nostril wasn't one solid color. And now I'm going to wipe this brush out and load it up with a little bit more white. And because there was a little bit of this pink color in there, I'm just making a very, very light pink color here on the palette. And we're going to tap a little highlight on the kitty's nose. And this is going to give it a little bit of texture, because the kitty's nose is not terribly smooth. All right, so there we have our kitty's nose, and we are going to now venture into whisker territory. So I'm going to use my liner brush and some white paint, and because I'm just picking up the color here on my palette, it is not completely stark white, which is perfectly fine. And I'm wondering, Stephen, if we have kept track of how many times we've said...
No!
Yes, you're so good with your counter. How many times we've said cat or cats in this video?
There's two more right there. I don't know if
cat.
I don't think you understand
Cat,
how much
cat,
work.
cat,
This is gonna
cat.
be... This is gonna take... I'm just gonna say...
Meow.
Oh, that doesn't count. That doesn't count.
Okay, so cat.
All right.
Would love to have a cat counter for this.
A CC, if you will.
Yes. All right, so I've thinned my paint down, and I'm always afraid that I don't have it quite thin enough. So thinning it out with water, and we are going to put on a few little whiskers here. So I'm going to start kind of right at the nose, and I'm just going to give a little pull down, because you would be able to see these whiskers coming from the other side of the cat's muzzle. All right, that's plenty of whisker action there.
Whiskerage.
Whiskerage. So I'm going to take a little brush here and just dampen it, and I want to come in and just kind of scrub the ends of these whiskers off so they all look like they start on the other side of the cat's face. Now, some will say, let's put some whiskers on the other side. So we'll give that a try. They're probably not going to show up as well, because this is so much lighter over here. It's very, very white. And we're painting white whiskers. So we'll give it a little try over here on this side, and we'll just try a couple. I'm holding the brush at the back of the handle and holding it up as high as I can, and just giving a few practice whiskers as I'm kind of lowering the brush to the surface. And I put 3 or 4 whiskers on right there, and they're probably not showing up, so we'll try to put a little heavier one on. And I'm not really seeing them unless I'm studying it, so we're going to leave those alone. But we are going to give, because cats don't see in the dark, everybody. Cats have whiskers that are generally a little bit longer than their face, so as they're moving around, they can feel when they're getting close to something. And they also have whiskers or eyelashes or something, feeler hairs above their eyes. So we're going to give the kitty a couple of those. So we'll just sweep, sweep, sweep until we get one or two that come on. There we go. And we're going to give him another one over here above this eye. So wisp, wisp, wisp as I'm moving down. And there we go. I have a couple of those really long hairs there. All right. So that's all we're doing, because we don't want to make too much out of that. Now I just want to check over the kitty cat and make sure everything's looking pretty good. I think we'll give him a little bit more of some white highlight at the top of his nose, and I'll just tap that in with my finger to soften it. Fingers make great painting tools. Absolutely. Okay, now one last thing that I want to do is to take a little bit of pink color. So I'm going to take some white, a little bit of burnt sienna, and a little bit of apple red. And I'm going to add a little more burnt sienna to that just to darken that up just a little bit. And I'm going to kind of make a little split in the cat's nose that's going to kind of connect down where his little mouth opens. Then we're going to start down here. Oh, need to make that a little bit darker. What I just did right there is probably, this is going to be your pro tip of the video. When I put my paint down, I was checking to see if the color was right. It wasn't, so I stopped immediately to alter it. So when you test something and it's not right, stop, correct it, and then go back to your painting. So with my darker kind of pinky color, I'm gonna just carry that down there a little bit and we'll soften that in. So now we've got the little nose having that little division there, and I think just giving it a check over, we've got lots of nice white highlighted areas down here, but it's not completely white. We've got our black areas that are black and brown, and then we've added some rusty areas, some bright turquoise highlights, and a little bit of gray. And I really think that's all we need to do for our little cat, who at this point has no name till you let me know what the name of this kitty cat is.
Me or the comments?
In the comments or
Yeah.
the emails.
Yeah, leave us an email or leave us a comment what you think the cat's name is.
And just to make sure that Stephen has something to do. Cat, 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 cat.
Thanks, Andy.
My pleasure. Here's a bunch of catnip to all of you who have painted along with Art Talk today and done a great little cat. I'd like to encourage you to like and subscribe. You can do that in the description box below, where we have a link to our downloadable design for the cat, as well as links to our curated set of folk art matte acrylic paints and our 7-piece brush set. Leave us a comment, and if you'd like to, you can leave us a compliment and email me at art_talk@plaidonline.com. Thanks for watching. Meow.